Punch, founded in 1841 by Henry Mayhew and Ebenezer Landells and edited by Mark Lemon, was a weekly satirical magazine published in London. Punch was popular throughout England, the colonies, and was distributed worldwide. Their readership was mostly the London upper and middle class, and prioritized reflecting the views and biases of the readers' demographics rather than the views of the writers and editors, many of which disagreed politically. Much of the contributions in Punch were provided anonymously. They often wrote on foreign affairs, including the war in America and the events throughout the decades leading up to the war. At their magazine's conception, they were generally anti-aristocracy, anti-slavery, pro-democracy, and very humanitarian. This reflected the political leanings of the London upper class, and as their leanings changed over time, so did Punch. In 1860, war was on the horizon for the United States. With the tension from the Lincoln election and the rise of anti-slavery, the South and the cotton industry were unsettled. England had abolished slavery in the 1840s and felt that America was behind on. They saw American democracy as flawed and ineffective. They criticized the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution and called out public figures such as U.S. presidents who owned slaves, as well as the Pope and American Christians in general for condoning slavery. Eventually, the issue of slavery took a backseat to their criticism of American trade, decline in cotton, and international relations. Punch continued to publicly oppose slavery and criticize the South for their part in it. Near the end of the war, however, Punch hinted at England recognizing the Confederacy as an independent nation. They cheered the passing of the Emancipation Proclamation, but claimed that the refusal to let the South secede constituted a kind of white slavery, and that the North's true reason for waging war was to oppress the South. The American South, by and large, felt that they had created the best possible and most profitable society for whites, requiring very little work to maintain their businesses, only needing capital for the property and the slaves. They also claimed states' rights on the grounds that the federal government had no right to legislate property, and feared that the emancipation of slaves would result not only in what they deemed a confusing and unnatural racial hierarchy, but could even result in black riots. Conversely, the North wanted the end of slavery, paid work opportunities for freed slaves, and the preservation of the Union. Lincoln felt that the Union could not survive while it was split on the slavery issue, and felt that the only way a Union would work was without slavery. This was especially important because the U.S. was expanding westward, and each new territory of land had to decide whether they would be a slave or a free state. Punch's view of the war was inconsistent over time. Their support changed from the North to the South and frequently criticized both sides. They saw the war generally as a war about secession and not as much about slavery. They felt that the North was depriving the South of their rights, that they were becoming too authoritarian, and that Punch changed their position many times. Throughout the 1840s, they were very anti-American in general. In the 1850s, they began showing sympathy for the North and called for a coming together of the country, but only on the condition of abolition. During this period, cartoons depicted Southerners as armed and disheveled, while Northerners were civilized and clean. Despite their humanitarian and anti-slavery leanings, their depictions of African Americans were as uneducated, ungrateful, and taking advantage. The 1860s saw a change in support from the North to the South. However, their support seemed to stem not from a true support for the South, but from a hatred of the North. During the war, Punch openly wished for the North's defeat. The reason for this shift is likely because of the North's disapproval of England's official stance on neutrality. The North published many anti-English articles, and Punch published many anti-Northern articles in return. Punch also took the Northern apprehension of 2 Confederate diplomats in London as an act of aggression. These reasons, along with the London upper class becoming more conservative, led Punch to completely disavow the North. They did not outright support the South, but disliked both sides and thought that neither one was in the right. According to Oscar Maurer, Lincoln was depicted in Punch as the butt of grotesque caricature of face and figure in the role of an arbitrary dictator, a deceiver of the public, a political opportunist using Negroes as pawns, in general a total failure both as president and as commander-in-chief. They denounced his re-election campaign, painting him as a failure, yet they changed their opinion of Lincoln immediately upon his death. An excerpt from a poem they published immediately following Lincoln's death goes, "How humble yet how hopeful he could be, how in good fortune and in ill the same, nor bitter in success, nor boastful he, thirsty for gold, nor feverish for fame." It's strange how a periodical as anti-slavery as Punch would ultimately give their support to the South. This raises some questions, but their frequent changes of stance is not something exclusive to this magazine. Many publishers, then and now, flip between stances to appeal to their readership and ensure profitability. For this reason, Punch can be viewed not only as a manufacturer of propaganda, but as a diary of the frequently changing opinion of the public. This is seen often in publications, especially ones with as large and varied a team of contributors as they had. Examining this media outlet helps illuminate the idea that foreign sentiment was in support of the abolitionist movement long before the United States got on board, but also provides another perspective that while slavery was the prevalent catalyst for the war, the cotton industry and the foreign relationships with the American economy also played a very large role.